So as this winter chill gets more intense, some Johannesburg residents will spend it without enough power. Now, we've been reporting this morning, City Power implementing load reduction to protect the grid from total collapse. And they say there's a sharp increase in electricity demand, which is causing a burden on an already strained grid. And this is despite Eskom not implementing load shedding for more than 10 weeks with no power cuts planned. The municipal power utility also says that substations with high demand will be targeted, while revenue collection efforts to cut off illegal connections will be ramped up. And I want to make some sense of this for you with our energy expert, Vally Padayache. And remember, I also want to bring in, I've got some tweets coming in this morning from different areas. And there's someone in Queenstown who tweeted me this morning saying, Iman, please correct the statement that Eskom hasn't implemented load shedding for 10 weeks. Kindly be advised that load shedding has been in Queenstown in the Eastern Cape immediately after the elections and continues today. So I want to address the concerns there by Ujambase about what the connection is between the provincial grids or the municipal grids and Eskom proper. So Vally, good morning to you, and thanks as always for being available to us. And we know, I didn't add it there, senior executive of City Power in Johannesburg, former executive manager of Eskom. So you know how all of this works intimately. What's gone wrong here? So you'll hear from our viewers, some of them are saying, but we've already had power cuts from before, before, just after the elections, and they continue. We see that happened and started in the city of Johannesburg last week. And City Power put out a statement saying that this is to protect the total failure of the grid. What's the correlation between, and we can ask silly questions in this whole interview, the correlation between what's termed the City Power grid and the Eskom grid?
Good morning, Imam, and a very good morning to your viewers as well. And thank you for inviting me back to your studios. And maybe firstly, as a disclaimer, I'm not here to talk officially on behalf of City Power, although City Power is my alma mater. I come from there, and bearing in mind the first load shedding in South Africa and in City Power was at City Power in 2007, 2008, and I was acting CEO at the time. So I know a lot about City Power, but I'll give you an independent view. Yes, the difference between the let's call it the national grid and the City Power grid is very subtle, because the national grid includes the City Power grid, and it includes all the grids of the different electricity utilities in the country, vis-a-vis the Eskom distribution grid, transmission grid, and the municipal grid. So all of these grids are interconnected. So it's a national grid. But just to answer your question and to keep it as simple as possible, there's a term that we use technically that to protect the grid, technically, very simply, you've got to match supply and demand. And for many months, we've been talking about the national load shedding. And there we've been very good up to now of preventing a total grid collapse by balancing the supply and demand. So that was done, is still being done nationally through the Eskom system operator nationally, National Control Center, and all the metros and Munichs collectively. But having said that, the demand in the different electricity utilities vis-a-vis the metros and Munichs varies. Now, a case in point is that City Power, given it's the economic hub of South Africa and of South Africa and Africa, is the largest load center. So it's the metro, the municipality, that takes the biggest demand, the biggest megawatts. And my understanding now, and you may fall off your seat, that my understanding is that the demand is 2,800 megawatts, plus or minus. And so that's the demand, power, and the energy consumed has dropped. It used to be, my understanding, 10,800 gigawatt hours. It's now about 8,000 gigawatt hours. So that's the enormity of the City Power situation. And because it's the biggest load center, we had the first load shedding in the country in City Power 2008. Now, I would argue, just to get to the end point, but get to explain it, is that with City Power embarking on its load shedding from today...
Or load reduction, which we'll talk about the difference between...
Load reduction and load shedding is the same, but not a blackout. So load reduction, as engineers, we like to call it load reduction, but for the common person, it's load shedding. So when we talked about NRR 048 Part 9, we talked a lot about load shedding and load reduction. So load reduction is load shedding, but what City Power is doing today is that they are load shedding or load reducing at certain times within their grid. And I would argue, and let me say this very carefully, that given City Power as the biggest load center, by them load shedding, load reduction, and 1st of July they will do load limiting, they are actually preventing us from going back into a national load shedding, which is good because we are plus or minus 73 days, and we would avoid going back into a national load shedding by City Power load shedding now.
So the city of Joburg is taking one for the national team, effectively, is what you're saying. By this action being implemented in the city, you're saying we're forestalling the possibility of national load shedding, given this context of the plus minus, as you say, 73 days of non-load shedding. So how does it affect Eskom's grid, or the bigger grid? As you say, the municipalities, the local, or the provincial grids, they're all interconnected. So whatever happens in one is going to have an effect, across the entire grid. How does this merge with the picture that Eskom's presenting of, we're fixing, we're maintaining, we're looking after the integrity of the actual infrastructure to prevent national load shedding?
Well, let me answer it in the following context, so I'll keep it as simple as possible for the ordinary layperson. Yes, I think Eskom's still doing all the good work, generation and their maintenance teams, system operations. They are still doing good work, and hence we've got the 73.
So no lies told there?
No lies told there, okay. And you can see it. I mean, you can come up with lies for few days, 10 to 15 days, but 73 days you can't do that. So let's take that away. But in terms of what contributes to the national imperative, you would rely on the load centers, as I mentioned to you. So the City Power load center is very critical. Now, the City Power grid currently is not performing well for two main reasons. You need a lot of capital. It's a capital-intensive sector, and you need a lot of investment, and there's not enough capital at all ways to invest. So there's been less than adequate investment in the City Power infrastructure. But more importantly, Imam, you're talking about the relationship with Eskom. I would argue that the Eskom load shedding since 2008 has exacerbated the condition of the national grid. I think that's given, but also exacerbated the condition of the municipal grids. I can say for that in 2008, I was still at City Power, that one of the key reasons why load shedding was stopped in 2008 was because of the damage that was being done to the municipal grids. City Power is a major recipient of that because it's a major network, and they haven't recovered. Also, just taking a side step, we had the REDS restructuring model, where there was not enough investment in the grid. So all of that has contributed to where we would find City Power now, and I would argue other metros and Munichs are in the same position, and the Minister of Electricity alluded to that.
So they're all going to start falling, well, they could potentially.
Yeah, so we'll have localized significant, let's call it load shedding, and if we're not careful, the end-use customers will still feel the wrath of it.
Energy expert Vally Padayache, thank you very much for stopping by this morning and explaining that. And I think one of the starkest things you said, because we've had this discussion this morning around load shedding and load reduction are one and the same things, according to Vally Padayache.